Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the arena with SEADUB. It's your boy SEADUB here, coming to you live. Hey guys, I want to go over an interesting topic with y'all today. Today's topic is going to be priced out of existence. And what I mean by priced out of existence is primarily talking about the elderly and senior age groups within our society. So when you think about the rising costs of everything and stuff going up rapidly like we're experiencing right now, and it's really not just right now, it's been a trend over time. If you really pay attention, things are getting more expensive, and of course people are making less money to pay for it. The people at the top are consolidating everything, and the people in the other classes are getting squeezed, definitely squeezed out of the middle class to where there's really just the haves and the have-nots within society. And unfortunately, it seems like it's the way it's been designed to be. But when you really look around and stuff and look at the state of affairs for a lot of people, it seems like some people are kind of in just a holding pattern, I guess you could say, just trying to hold on to the things that they have, and maybe not what they have, but what they've been allowed to have, or incurred debts to have and stuff like that, such as housing, cars, things. And I think this especially affects the elderly. I know in my area there's a lot of elderly people that have been swept under the rug because their investments don't match up with the way that inflation has gone through the roof, or the money they've saved doesn't match up with what the money they've saved has not paced with the economy and stuff like that. So you see a lot of people who are in states of home ownership and stuff like that, and they can't afford to maintain their homes. They got cars, they can't afford to maintain their cars. And I think it's a really interesting situation because I think it is probably affecting the elderly at a disproportionate rate. I think another interesting factor of this discussion is that you see a much higher number of elderly within the current workforce right now than there has been in the past. I mean, you go to Walmart, you go to any stores, you go to jobs. I mean, even at the some of the corporate places that I've worked at, there's people that definitely are at an age where they should be thinking about retirement, but instead they're in there busting their ass and going hard and trying to keep up with everybody else because somewhere along the line, maybe they didn't plan to make it this far, or, it's just the way things are currently. And that's led them to be in a situation where they've felt the need to stay in the work. All respect to them, because at the end of the day, they're just out here trying to feed their family just like everybody else. I think in a big part of it too is when you look at disability payments, social security payments and stuff like that, things that the elderly often count on when they get to end of life situations, or the later golden years of their life as what it's been called in the past. Those payments and subsidies and stuff like that, those have not kept up with current prices and things like that at all. They can probably pay the house mortgage from the house you secured 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, and you're still paying on it. It can pay that bill and stuff like that, but as far as everything else that comes with the life and the maintenance of those things that you've incurred over the years, it's not supporting any of that. So you look at people that have, things and assets and things like that, and they can only afford to keep it. They can't afford to maintain it. And I think that's going to cause an extreme bucking in the system as we come on through later years, as we experience a continuation of this economy and stuff like that. And I don't see it changing anytime soon. There's going to be a lot of people that are in big trouble when severe maintenance occurs that you can't defer any further. And I think that also puts a lot of trade industries in a weird point as well, because they've made a living off fixing these types of problems for people and regular maintenance and stuff like that, but all the maintenance is deferred. They're not trying to do any of this stuff. People don't want to spend the necessary money to prolong what they have. They just need to do just enough to keep it. I also don't think programs like Social Security and disability were ever intended to be the primary means of living for people. In this world that we live in, people get into situations where they're looking for that fallback subsidy to keep them afloat and stuff like that. I don't think the earlier government officials that put these things in place, I don't think they planned on the exponential, and I don't think there was plans for the exponential price increases and stuff that have incurred over the past, probably 40 years or so. These corporations and stuff have figured out ways to usher us all into consumeristic slavery, to where, we've become slaves to the ownership of things. And those things have made us slaves to the system, right? You know, the more things you have, the more assets, is just like the more chains you put on yourself. And a slave doesn't realize it's in slavery when it's choosing to put the chains on for itself. You know, and honestly, I think it's really sad when you see the older generation in the workforce and stuff, because a lot of them have skills, a lot of them have a lot more experience and things like that. But when you look at current job markets and stuff, there's extreme competition for entry-level positions and stuff like that. So it's probably like the shrinkflation of jobs, right? To where people with large amounts of experience, large amounts of time put in, and probably better work ethic than the younger generation, they're having to settle for smaller positions and stuff like that, which either leads people to downsize their lifestyle or be priced out of existence, essentially. You know, it definitely breaks my heart to see the older generation still having to work when, you know, retirement and stuff like that should have been more in the plans, because it scares me to think about that could be my mom or my dad out there at some point. I mean, hell, it probably will be, you know, and I think it's really scary to think about. You know, I don't want my parents to be having to do some, you know, undignified job and stuff like that, you know, late, you know, you could do some undignified type job until, you know, the next day they roll you over in your grave. And shit, man, I don't think that's any type of way to live, guys. I don't think we were put here to live that type of existence. But I mean, there's just no way to know what type of world we're headed towards. And when you really factor stuff like, you know, AI and the revolution that it could be bringing along with it, you know, if there's mass unemployment and, you know, just mass layoffs and mass people without jobs, what is that going to mean for, you know, the people that have already been on the verge of being priced out of existence? And you know, I'm using this priced out of existence as a metaphor, but that could become a real thing where people just can't afford to live anymore. You see homeless people and stuff like that, but when there reaches an amount of people that are homeless, without money, without income, and without any type of support, and they truly become priced out of existence because there's just an overabundance of that class of people, what happens then? You know, I mean, it's a scary thought to think that we've probably entered a point where there is no return on, you know, where this world is possibly headed. And I think it's interesting to weigh the possibilities of what could be coming next. And, you know, it's like I've heard an investor also say, you know, holding on to cash money is just like, you know, watching your money lose value. And I think it's really interesting because a lot of people probably don't know anything more about investments more than like 401k, Roth IRA, and stuff like that, you know, trusting somebody else to make sure that your financial future is in place. But, you know, I think a lot of people in the older class thought, you know, holding on to cash money would be the way, and, you know, the way to save for the future. But it's clear that, you know, wealth transferred in different ways. You know, you have Bitcoin, you got S&Ps, you got ETFs, and now you got REITs and stuff like that. You know, the rich are figuring out ways to move their money around. The rich won't be priced out of existence because they've always maintained being one step ahead. And I don't think you can fault these people from being smart and understanding that we live in a system and you know how to play the game. There's a lot of people that are going to be hurting that had no idea of this knowledge, no idea of these steps that they needed to take. It's going to leave them essentially priced out of existence, guys. You know, what's y'all's thoughts on this topic? Do you think people are going to be priced out of existence? What could that mean for America? I mean, or even the greater world? You know, I think part of being priced out of existence could also be the collapse in the power of the U.S. dollar. I mean, maybe the U.S. dollar is not going to collapse within America, but I think it's pretty clear that in the coming future, other companies won't be buying gas with American dollars, and you know, it's not going to be the store of value for currency exchange worldwide. You know, I think there's some cryptocurrencies that are coming to fill that gap and stuff like that. And I mean, hey, sometimes I wish I could do some currency exchange for those brick dollars and stuff, if that's what they're going to be trading for petroleum and stuff for overseas. Yeah, let me know what y'all think about this. I don't want to ramble on too long here, guys. I'm getting pretty long-winded into this, but definitely feel kind of passionately about it because I see it definitely affecting the area that I live in, and I think it's probably only going to get worse, guys. Anyways, this has been The Arena with SEADUB, discussing tough topics and telling life stories, guys. If you found me on here, I love you guys.